So picking up yesterday where we were on talking about the male principle and the female principle. And again, I want to stress a few points. This is ultimately speaking about a binary system of creation, of being, even at some I use it like being, some other, that Yahweh has that allows for creation. Everybody knows it takes a male and a female. It takes to make a third. So it really is a principle of 1 + 1 = 2. That's the only, it's either mathematical equations that you just can't break. There's no other way to get multiplication. That's the way it has been set up in the cosmos. Now, and I want to stress another point. And this is important to me that we kind of, in my opinion, I'm trying to encourage people to not be afraid. I always say things like that. I believe that Yahweh's ability to keep me is greater than the enemy's ability to deceive me. I believe that the esoteric knowledge that is something to be afraid of. We are children of the light. That as long as you just, do Torah and read the writings. I don't have a lot of fear. Because that's what he says, perfect love casts out all fear. I don't have a lot of fear that I'm going to end up in some crazy camp, with all sorts of deceptive doctrines. I really don't believe that. So maybe if believing is receiving, then maybe that's a good place to be. So I want to pick up with this concept again, how the female is used, because it helps to free us from a lot of fundamentalist applications and keep women, basically bottom line, keep women in a box, or, we know historically in a caste system where, she was equated the same thing with a cattle, with an animal, with a bee. This is all because of Hasatan loving to keep the truth, and he can just denegate and subjugate whole pockets of the populations. And this is what goes on in history, and this is what we need to be free from. So that being said, one of the most important principles, again, for me to understand, or that helps people to understand, especially when you get into esoteric understanding. Now, when you say this, I'm talking esoteric there's two kinds of knowledge out there. There's exoteric, which means, and this is what our Bible is telling us, there's exoteric knowledge, which is for everybody. Then there's what's known as esoteric knowledge, and this is wisdom at the highest level. And there's a very good verse in 2nd Esdras. I don't have it at the top of my fingers. I think it's 2nd Esdras 14. There's a whole little chapter there. And 2nd Esdras chapter 12. See, 2nd Esdras is a Deuterocanonical book that is just full of apocryphal and esoteric understanding and code words. But there is this level that is kept for the wise. This is nothing that the rabbis, you don't learn this right off the bat in yeshiva. You don't teach this in kindergarten, because it takes a lot of precept upon precept to begin to even think and see what's there. And it's also because a lot of the thematic stuff, I always tell people esoteric knowledge is a lot of times it's adult themed material that you don't really need or want to teach children. That's why you teach them like the birds and the bees kind of thing, because they don't need to know the details. They're not at a place to understand these details. So that is why a lot of this language is done that way deliberately. And we're the ones that are confused about all this, in my opinion, is especially the last days house of Ephraim. We need to get up to speed, and we need to get back into the house of Judah and receive from them on their terms. My other disclaimer is, yes, we know that by and large, the house of Judah does not accept Yeshua as Messiah ben Joseph. Well, that's a no-brainer. And that is also prophesied. This is this is what Paul said. He said, look, at blindness, there's a certain amount of blindness on them in part. It's all part of a bigger plan until the end of the age. And that's why today we see so many Torah people coming to, so many Jews coming into an understanding of Yeshua ben Joseph. And you see so many Ephraimites coming into an understanding of what the house of Judah has and has kept for us in these lives. So this is all part of a bigger plan. But when I go into the literature, it's a no-brainer. They don't see Yeshua as Messiah ben Joseph. So I just see their arguments, which is really an interesting thing, because now and I see how they perceive the scriptures, but it's okay. Doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. We are two houses of the same, same mother. We have the same mother. So anyways, all that being said, one of the most important principles when you're dealing with esoteric understanding is to understand there is always an inner manifestation and an outer manifestation. That's why I said there's exoteric knowledge, and then there's esoteric knowledge. And this is an archetype, and it fits in every level all the time, no matter what subject matter you're talking about. And when you see this, you can understand why the prophets talk the way they do, or like Paul talks, he talks about the inward man, and those are always talking about the mechanisms and the programs in us, or the parts of our persona that deal with our soul life, our spiritual and soul life, which you can't see. They're hidden. And that's on purpose, but that doesn't mean that you close a blind eye. There's as much information in our text about those dimensions as there is about the physical, and the historical aspects of the text. So it's couched as an inner or an outer. It's also couched in terms of the visible or the invisible. And a lot of the text, especially in the apocryphal text, they'll say that right out. I have a great quote I've just used from Enoch. In Enoch's series, says, that Yahweh used the visible and the invisible dimensions to make his atom, so we're made up. So these are things that we just need to, just as givens when you're doing all this. But one thing, there's a very enigmatic verse in Isaiah 3:12, and it talks about the prophet is coming against the daughters of Zion. Now, why do they denegate? Again, why are they denegating women, daughters, the female a lot of times? Because it does, on the surface reading, it does seem to denegate the female. But is that really the end of the story, and we walk away and we denegate a whole other half of the species? No, it's because in the archetypal understanding, like I said, Chokmah is the father and but Bina is the mother. But there is a fallen, and the flip side of this, and I'm not even going to get into anything. We know that there's a whole fallen kingdom. The kingdom of Hasatan, the whole fallen kingdom, operates completely alongside of the kingdom of light. Now that's another, and this is where it gets exciting to me again, in the physics of that they're discovering today, the whole world of quantum mechanics. There's like a couple of realities going on all at the same time, and they have no way. Science is at an absolute end of its rope right now, because they have no language, no math, no tools in which how to project the outcome at that level. See, that's why we can fly a plane today, because we can take all the math and the formulas and the wind speed and, the gravitate, all these things, and we can put it into formulas, and we can absolutely, with certainty, come up with formulas so you know how to take the plane off and you know how to land the plane with absolute certainty. Isn't that a good thing? But as soon as you get out of this, yesterday I talked about the four worlds. As soon as you get out of the first world of physicality, the first world of matter, or what we operate in as the first three dimensions, try to get into a fourth dimension or any higher, we have no tools for projecting with absolute certainty the outcome of a situation. And that's all in the text. And I think that's just really interesting. Other than the fact that we are told with certainty that how it all works out, that's why in a person's life, people's lives are so different. Who can ever figure out why this happens to that person and that happens to another person? Why do the righteous suffer? Except the fact that there's two ways. There's the way of light and there's a way of darkness. If you walk the way of darkness, boom, you're cursed. If you walk the way of light, boom, you have a future and a hope. Other than that, there's no more probability with exactness. So, all that being said, in the daughters of Zion, so why I wanted to say the reason why women are a lot of times denegated, because as an archetype, it is because Eve fell Eve is the one who originally instituted the fall. And this, I can't even begin to unpack this, what happened in the garden in this. When there is a side of the female element that is literally in captivity, or so close to the clip-off, to the evil influence, to the evil inclination, sometimes they denegate it because it's so easy to just fall. When you're walking in the realm of the feminine, close to physicality, it's so easy to be deceived or to fall. The snares are so great. I hope that all made sense. So in Isaiah, there's another verse in, I think, where it talks about women. Okay, as for my people, a babe is their master, and women rule over them. Oh, my people, they that lead these cause them to err and destroy the way of the path. These leaders, okay, so what does that mean, that a woman rule over them? Because historically we would, like, especially if you're in a good Southern Baptist, like say, you're all filled with the spirit of Jezebel because women are ruling over you. Well, that is not at all what the text is saying. Okay, what they're saying is women. Let me try to, and and I have this commentary, and I'm not 100% sure. Oh, it's a midrash from Rabbah Shemos. So it's a midrash, and I'm not 100% where I got it from, but let me read this. So, O my people, they that lead thee to cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy past. These leaders were haughty, who used their ornaments, and I'll explain what ornaments means, for pompous self-aggrandizement, are directed against the kind of Torah scholars who use their knowledge and proficiency as a sort of arrogance in order to rule over others. Haven't we all experienced that, right? These self-seeking scholars cause the corruption of leadership, which in turn brings immorality. The Talmud speaks of leaders who were never a regular Bible student in the Bet Midrash, and therefore know neither Bible, nor Mishnah, nor Gemara, and therefore lack all the qualifications for true leadership. According to rabbinic tradition, verses 18 through 24 enumerate 24 kinds of ornaments with which it was customary to bedrock brides, and these 24 kinds of ornaments in turn correspond to the 24 books of the Bible, which are the ornaments of those Torah sages who are fully familiar with them. So to restate what I was saying, basically when women rule, it's a way of saying, and there's another verse, and I think Paul is saying this to Timothy, you don't let a novice, this is what's so important, you don't let a novice have a position of authority or rulership, especially in what they would consider a Torah school, because these people are not grounded. They're going to lead you into error. This is why, and this is always the rub, where you have truly called saints who have done their homework, the true teacher who, and this is especially in the Jewish concept, and this is something, again, we need to, as Ephraimites coming, we need to really raise the bar. You need to know everything, Talmud, Gemara, the Mishnah, all of the writings. You have to be a Torah sage. That's the safest place to be for those who want to teach. That's why it says teachers will be judged more harshly, because you're dealing with the Holy Word, but because you have to know length and breadth and depth and height, which is another way. You got to have a full mastery of all these subjects, because they're so interrelated and so interconnected, and there's so many levels. And this is, again, gets into the word they use of initiated. If you're not, why would you put a high school calculus kid teaching a grad school college level calculus? Nobody in the secular world would do that. They'd be laughed out of the classroom. Nobody would put up with that. Why do we in the church put up with that? That's why people are sitting in these churches week after week, starving to death, basically having a famine of the word, no depth. I talk to so many Christians who say, oh my gosh, I've heard that sermon 25 million times. Well, you have. We need to raise the standard. So that's why I'm saying when women rule over you, what they're saying, they're not talking about the female gender. They're talking about this kind of, this level of understanding that no one in a secular sense would ever put up with if you're trying to teach in college levels. And yet we seem to do that over and over. Or the flip side is, and it leads to bad character. The one thing, somebody who truly is a Torah scholar, you know, if you, that means, how does it go? You walk the talk and you talk the walk. And then you have to have the fruit. You know, they're humble. They're don't lord it over people. They understand. They fear and trembling and trepidation as you handle the word. So again, these are some of the ways. And like I said, just getting back into this word ornaments, who would have known that the way the rabbis are using the word ornaments is, and that makes sense because that also applies to in the script of the Hebrew when they get, have you ever seen the really, I don't know what the word would be, there's a word for it, the flowery script, but they have all the little cantillation marks and the little points, the little crowns on everything. These are the ornaments, but the ornaments are 24 books of Torah that you have to master this stuff. All right. So that is one side of the coin that I wanted to put forward about how to get free from fundamentalism. And another one I found, which was really interesting, is in Isaac's name, which means laughter. All right. And I always kind of thought, well, that's not like a very deep name, you know, to give somebody like a patriarch like Isaac the name laughter. I mean, laughter is good. We know it. Merry heart doeth good. But I always felt there has to be something deeper here. There has to be something more to this. Okay. So, lo and behold, I was reading, but it's important because it says that through Isaac, the seed of Israel will be called. Because you know the story. Let me see who we're talking about. We're talking about Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Ishmael, right? And then he goes on to say that it's, no, Abraham had two sons, Isaac and Ishmael. So why does he say that it's through the seed of Isaac that the righteous seed will be called? Well, this gets in again, that the name of laughter ties into this, and it ties into the concept of the feminine too. So one of the things I think that the Jews have a better understanding of, and they absolutely have a better historical precedent of practice in this area, is seeing themselves more as an organism, as a collective, united group of people. Especially in the West, we're very independent. We love our schisms. We love being able to have our 40,000 different denominations, and we don't really see ourselves. We really don't, I think, in my opinion, is as an organism that are connected as the body of Christ, the body of Yeshua that Paul tries to say. And if one part of the body hurts, it hurts the rest of the body. If someone in the body, if they're celebrating, that it all works together, that you can't, it's better to think of it and function it as a collective whole than as a bunch of separate parts, each one doing their thing. And this has hurt us. But the Jews have, and this is one of their strengths, and this is why they've been able to live 2,000 years almost in exile, because they have such a crazy concept. And well, let me put it this way, it's truly hardwired into their collective consciousness that it's not each man for himself, it's each man together. That's why the Jews hold together so well. And we need to have it because we are an organism more than we are separate little individuals. That's why a lot of the language, when they praise, you know, they always pray in the plural. We thank you, Abba. And this would behoove us. This is why a lot of liturgy, making it more in the plural, because we're in this together. This is a concept. And this is something that the feminine principle is very strong in collectiveness. And I just want to give a little story here as an aside. Somebody you know, I was talking about this with Aria, okay? And Aria, some of you guys know, she's one of our beloved saints in the group, and she's helped out a lot. But she has a, you know, a disability that keeps her from really functioning in her family life in a traditional way. Like her husband has had to really pick up a lot of the slack, raising the kids and doing a lot of household stuff. But what it has done is and she was saying how he and this is a phenomena that's happening today across the board. So there's always a good side to, there's a negative. So a lot of times as gender relationships are kind of getting blended more, and a lot of men do what have been called traditionally women's duties, and a lot of women move into what are traditionally men's roles, there is a blending going on. But in the good sense, it does have a good, it can have, with you do Torah, in a good sense. So she says that her husband, he's come to this real understanding of how women's roles is so much different than men's roles, and how it's almost even really harder because you have to juggle. This is the point of multitasking. You have to juggle so many things at the same time. Most men traditionally, and if we train our brains differently, this change, are linear. You know, you just start a job and you finish it, boom, and then you come home and you're off duty. But when you raise children and run a household, you have to be able to multitask. You have to be able to do 5, 10, 15 all at the same time. And he came to her one day and said, you know, I don't know how you guys do it. It's so hard. I got to do all this stuff at the same time. You know, you got to cook dinner and shop and do the homework, and you got to do all this stuff at the same time. It uses different parts of your brain, is what I'm trying to say. It's not good, it's not bad, but it sure helps to give an appreciation between the sexes of how. So I know a lot of men, even in my son's generation. I have a 30-year-old son, and one of his best friends just is now taking off a chunk of, he quit his regular job. He's staying home now to raise their daughter and to be the major homemaker, quote unquote, while she goes out, because he's going to use this season to redirect his life and to, you know, he's actually a closet philosopher anyway. But what I'm trying to say is now it's becoming more acceptable for men to do this, and it's a very good thing because they get to use parts of their brain and they get to see what it's like for the other side. And so, and as women go out into the marketplace, so I'm saying these blendings that are, but then again, we know all the downside of it. I mean, just look at what's going on in America today with our Supreme, you know, with the Congress and the Senate. I mean, it has so many downsides to it also, but I don't want to get into that. I was talking about Isaac and laughter. So I hope you didn't mind that rabbit trail. So what is really behind Isaac's name of laughter? Scientifically, they have found out that laughter, what it does, in the quote I have, laughter describes like a form of jogging for the innards. You ever like have a total belly laugh and you're like, it's just like your whole body convulses. And it can be very healing, and it's very, you know, when you're all done, you're almost exhausted sometimes because it uses a good deep belly laugh, and that all the mechanisms in our body that go into that really does use so many of our body parts. So anyways, they have found that humanity's incredible success in the world is not due to our intelligence per se, but it is rather to our ability to laugh at a level. Now, let me see if I can explain this. To tune into each other. Synchronicity, or mentally blending together at the reflex and subconscious or inward level, is what has made us as a species able to survive. It's like, what do they call that? Circling the wagons. All right. Many closely monitored and double-blinded experiments have shown that humans, particularly kin or family and romantic partners, have the ability to synchronize their heartbeat, their skin conductivity, think about that when you think about race, and even general mood. And we know that women living together oftentimes have their time of the month at the same time. That always seems to happen after a while. So what is going on here? It says that in the natural world, it says here, one naked ape isn't much of a foe, right? But 15 of them could be problematic. So unless, of course, it says that less, of course, these 15 don't want anything to do with each other. So in other words, laughter is akin to a concept of circling the wagons around a central cognitive event. So let's say we're all in the room and somebody does something funny, and we all have the same trigger response. We all respond with this incredible inward reaction of laughter, of getting into the inward, the belly. How did it say here? The levels, namely by examining. All right. Should they, however, demonstrate a very high level of synchronicity, namely by exclaiming their alarm cry in utter synchronicity, perhaps even in multiple voices and snazzy rhythms, that any enemy with any sense at all will realize that the group is not simply 15 naked apes, but rather one super organism like a dragon with 15 heads and a transparent body. So this is the point. When you become an organism, a united whole, to your enemy, it's so much more overwhelming. People think, well, I can pick one off, I can pick them, but that's why the Jews, I'm saying, this consciousness, so that's why through Isaac, the point is, would be say, this group mentality of we are saved by the Spirit, we have something in common with each other that is even on a higher level than our confession or a lot of the other things that draw us together. We literally are an organism. And I think Judah has that much higher than we do. We need to have it. And as the two houses come together, it is this synchronicity that is going to, in my opinion, we kind of tip the scales over the side of evil. That we will be so overwhelmingly united and strong and in synchronization and in a united front that evil no longer has a chance. And why this comes back to laughter, which comes back to the concept that this is a female, because Isaac is on in the Sephirithic tree. Each patriarch is also coded as a Sephiroth. He is on the left side, and this is a highly, because this is like men. This whole thing, men like to be very, the war mentality. I'll fight the fight. You don't need anybody else. It's a switch in mentality. Truly. More of a feminine side of dealing as a united front. I hope that all made sense. But that really helps satisfy to me why laughter and what is going on and why through Isaac. Because part of the covenant is you are coming into covenant with a unity, with an organism. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. We're part of the body of Yeshua. And mentally, when you wire your brain, that's why, one for all and all one, the unity in diversity that Jackson, the Yahad has this concept. That is really a very highly evolved synchronatic kind of concept. So I wanted to also put that out there.
All right. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the art world now.
Well, I'm just, if you don't know, I'm a watercolor painter. And so I teach and I paint watercolors as a professional artist and have been active in the gallery scene in my area and trying different things. I do have I do have a YouTube channel, so I would encourage people, if you want, to check out my YouTube channel that has a lot of teachings along this line, and I also have an art website. So either way, if you put my name in Google, Liz McGee, you're going to get both the YouTube and my art website. And
have you started doing portraits yet?
No, I don't do portraits. I don't. That's just such a huge specialization. You almost got to really focus on that. Okay. It's very. So I really am kind of a landscape, impressionistic, seascape, landscape artist. I'm going to finish. I have a part 3 here on freedom from fundamentalism. A title I have, which is subtitled Understanding the Divine Masculine and the Divine Feminine. What is the language in the Bible trying to tell us when it uses these words male and female? So I am going to take a little bit of a different, this is a huge topic. This is nothing that can really be expounded in any great way in just these short teachings, because it is something that, the sages, the prophets have spent their whole lifetime. This is a lifetime journey trying to get deep understanding of Torah. But as I say, it's the best journey in town. What else are we going to do with our time as we wait for our redemption to draw nigh? But I have been talking a little bit about the poetic language, the words male and female, what they really represent. We're not talking about gender down here. I'm not talking about my physical being a woman or, Jackson being a guy. And I'm not talking about feminine in the terms of like being a feminist or any of that kind of stuff. That's all lower level very tainted understanding, profane, really held very tightly to their esoteric understanding. And for reasons that, who knows, they have felt that this is privileged knowledge that they have. And so it's been behooving us, as we understand that we are the other half of the coin, we are the second house of this thing, that this knowledge is ours also. And we have to go at it, in my opinion, with full confidence and full throttle, especially at the end of the age, and get up to speed with Judah. And it says in Hosea at some point that Judah will stop being jealous of us and we will stop being antagonistic towards them. This is a goal. And a lot of this centers around the central core knowledge that we all can have, that all of the All Israel should have about Yahweh Elohim. So I want to stick today with the poetic. I've been talking about the poetic language. Now we're going to go into the physics of it, because I have a new kind of understanding that these are our patriarchs, or the sages, prophets, the way they wrote the Torah, they were poetic physicists. I can say such a thing, because they used the language in the most beautiful, cogent way, that painting these amazing pictures, but at the same time, they're telling a reality that is pure physics. And this is something that is really, as I get deep, I get deep into the mystical writings where all this deep esoteric, sod level understanding is kept. And this is why the Jews have remained at the top of the game in terms of world, I've said the Nobel Prize, I think it's like over 60% of Nobel Prize winners in the whole world have always been Jews. And that's not an accident, because they have so much knowledge, and that gives them like a head start on things, because I believe they have a correct worldview. So enough intro, I guess. One of the major archetypes of, you discover this in, is there's a systematic theology that the Jews have. I've talked about this, that they keep it in a system, very organized, called parts. But it centers around this concept of the tree of life. And the tree of life is, my understanding is, Hebrew is very concrete. In other words, they use very specific things in the natural that we can relate to express deep understandings. So in other words, the tree of life, why would they pick that archetype, that symbol, as trying to explain everything that we can know about Yahweh? There's a lot of stuff we can know. And one thing that came up in the last, I think the first session, is like, Jackson, you like to refer to me sometimes as a mystic. I don't know that because I think that has kind of a weird connotation to it. Mystic, just somebody who really is delving into what we can know about the supernal realms or the heavens. They're there. And the Torah is full of information. So in other words, the tree of life is a good symbol, because you have what is a concept of an oral Torah and a written Torah. I've been through this before. And the tree of life, in one sense, it's the written Torah, the tree in its outer sense, what we can see. It represents a root. There's a root system. There's a trunk. There are branches. There are leaves. There are fruit. There's all these manifestations of processes that we see. But what is making those things happen is this whole concept of what is hidden, the invisible, or the oral Torah, which inside you have all this whole system of the sap, the capillaries, the processes, the syntheses that are going on between the sunlight and the moisture. And it relates to this, the unseen parts of us, our soul, our mind, all these concepts, things that are happening to us. So it's a great analogy, because you can see a tree, it's huge, and it can represent every type of functionality that could possibly be going on. Seen and unseen, or today they would call it the subatomic world versus the seen world. So this is what they do. They're trying to give us information about the seen and the unseen realms using analogies we can relate to. And what they're doing is systematizing it, but it's very much about physics. So this is where I want to do a little bit today in talking about this. There's a new book I'm reading, my latest book, which is a really good one for anybody. It's called Inner Space. Aria Kaplan was a great Taurus Age you know, he's since presently died. He died kind of young, which is sad because he was a great mind. But he has this, I want to read this little portion from this book to explain what I'm saying. Because a lot of my knowledge, you know, that a lot of this is couched in what people term the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, which has nothing to do with what the world is doing with all the esoteric knowledge. There's a pure stream and there's an impure stream. Oh, that shouldn't be news to anybody. So it says the entire Zohar becomes an open book. The Zohar is the most redacted writings we have of this stream of information that has been preserved in the House of Judah. Okay, so for example, you could study the qualities of metals and see that silver is white, gold is yellow, copper is red, certain things are harder and others softer. Yet you will not understand the reasons for any of these things until you know atomic theory and solid state physics. Once you have learned these disciplines and you know exactly how light is reflected from certain atoms of copper, you understand why copper is red, and it all makes sense and becomes part of a system. The teachings could be called the atomic theory of the Zohar. Everything begins to make sense, and one can go deeper and deeper as far as the human mind can delve, and it will always yield new treasures. This is an understanding why they use a lot of, like metals, they use a lot of language, and most people just think it's poetic. It's like, gold is shiny, so that, but what we don't understand so much, and what we need to begin to understand, is there is real physics couched in these words. Now, we know a lot of the physics of the material realm, and that's why we can fly planes and do a lot of things today with great exactness. But what the modern secular mind, especially the Western modern secular and religious mind, has dished is any belief that these words can actually couch and teach us things about not only the physical world, but the supernal worlds. And so it's our problem. We're the ones that are confused, and we don't understand what's really in this language and these words. The ancients totally understood it, and they wrote like to the choir, like they all knew what they were talking about. I wanted to say Mark Heston did a great teaching. The teaching he did on the archetype of the temple and the mind, and it's no accident. And so I want to talk about how Yahweh has made a system that is completely linear, it's orderly, everything fits into everything else, it's a flow, it's an emanation, it works. And so they have always used, let's see, and these are big concepts, so I'm just going to throw out these concepts because there's no way to unpack them. But it talks in our text that there are 4 worlds. They have names for them, and they function in different levels, because what Mark was perceiving is that our consciousness, we go from being a body to being a soul to being a spiritual being. All of those processes are couched, enclosed in us, and work in us all at the same time. I mean, that's a pretty brilliant system to have going. That's why the atom, that's why we are a microcosm of the macrocosm of, Yahweh Elohim. We are a very small, we're made in his image. So the way the cosmos that he made functions is a sort of way that we function. So learning and believing this, first of all, believing this, understanding this, and then using the understanding the words that they use to express these realities. Today we have, Freud and I've said this, the whole world of psychology is giving us this information in a very secular way. The ancients used words like air, water, fire, and earth to express this same principle. So you have these 4 worlds. You have state, and that is akin to, like they call, states of matter, and there is physical matter, because this is a huge principle. There is always a seen part of this equation. There's always an unseen. You can see the trunk of the tree, but all the processes that are going outside, beneath, and it's just like our skin. So you see me, but I have a skin barrier, so you can't see what's going on inside. This archetypal principle just runs true for everything. So you have these 4 states of matter, but you have on the other side of this thing these 10 separate, these 10 kind of ways in which Yahweh interfaces with his creation, and he does what he does on many levels. So it's a very interconnected, multi-level thing that is set up here. So part of my thing is because we need to stop apologizing for the Bible and pretending that it really is just a little bunch of allegorical stories that like mean nothing. That is the lie of Hasatan, and that's why he makes us look like a fool in front of the world. But we need to turn the tables, and we can once we really understand how deeply couched, how truth is so deeply couched inside these concepts. So you have, and the male and the female is the primary. It is like the starting point. We said when he made man in his image and likeness. Image refers to the right side. The male likeness refers to the female. It's very systematic. So you have this male and female, which we know now in the highest understanding. It's relating to our mind. And this is what Mark brought out. The way our mind is set up with a right brain and a left brain, and then a middle pillar, and the part of the brain in the middle, and that goes down into the spinal cord. That is totally deliberately done. And that is how he has separated yet made processes to combine and to use this left hemisphere and this right hemisphere to do things. So in other words, so let's just take this concept for the male and the female, which is really, it's a concept of similarity but opposites. It's couched in words like Bina, which is the female, which is understanding. You've got Chokmah, which is the male, and it relates to the tetragrammaton. You've got the Yod, Yod, Hey is Bina, Yod is Chokmah, and this is the highest level. This is where, in the mind of Elohim, this is where everything starts. It's going in. So he has made these quote unquote opposites. He has made the male and female. The Chinese, this is ancient knowledge, the yin and the yang. You're talking about the same thing. It's a concept of thesis and antithesis. And it's all about relationship. So a lot of times you have the whole poetic world of relationship. You've got the male and the mother and the daughter, the father and the son, and all the different relationships, because we can kind of understand relationship because we have them. And this is all predicated on the fact, of course, that Yahweh has no sex, gender. He has no form, he's spirit, but we want to relate to him. He said it, we have a desire. So this is one way they do it. So you have in the physics of it, you have light. He made light and he made energy. These are waves and these are emanations. These are huge primordial forces that filter down and fill everything. There is nothing that doesn't have his light, but some of it is so now at this point in physicality diffused and hidden in a sense, so many layers on top of it that but the principle we're talking of, this principle is the same. Now so you have to have, understand the 10 separate, the 4 worlds, the 4 states of matter. You have in the supernal realms, if you're talking about the invisible realm, so to speak, you're more into air, water, fire, and earth. But they know today, this is what science, it relates to the 4 states of matter in physicality. You've got gases, liquids, plasma, which is fire, and solids. So this is all, this is why Philo, a lot of the writings, and I'll even give you a quote because I want to do this from, this is from the Clementine Homilies on the works of creation. And it says here, he alone, Yahweh, alone turned the 4 contrary elements into one, into the one first simple substance. Thus combining them, he made of them myriads of compounds, so that being turned into opposite natures and mingled, they might affect the pleasure of life and the combination of contrary things. But I want you to tell, they knew what they were talking about, and they were talking about just what I said, and they were talking about what modern science is telling us. See, we have to believe that we have to, and this is my thing, I feel like I kind of do this alone a lot, but there's a lot of comments, and we need to get, in my opinion, to this level. We need to crack this code, learn this language, and speak it to the world, because again, when the two houses are reunited and when we come in, we're going to be able to tell the world, yeah, we told you so. The world, so much of our information has been hijacked and profaned, and Yahweh does not get the glory for it. And it just personally really irritates me. But anyways, so as we come into this, understand, we'll just stick with, and this is the one middle pillar, and so we have a right brain, a left brain in the middle. What I have to say about the middle is this is an area of where they have really couched, let's see, this number. All right, so there are three, how do I say this? There are three, you know how there's three pillars. There's a right pillar, a left pillar, and there's a middle pillar. Well, it's talking, and it talks about, and Enoch speaks of this, it's been about 3 books. You know, he created the world with 3 books, and you think books is a bad, that's a bad word, because what it's really explaining and text telling us is that he made the world with number, with alphabet, and with speech. And this is so important to understand, because again, in the poetic language, you got to understand, and this is why the Gemara, in every letter is a number, and number, and this is what I said, and I gave a quote from Philo in the very first video I did, like, well, why did God, Yahweh didn't need 6 days to make the earth. He's all powerful. He could have just, boom, he could have spoken the whole thing, but he needed to make it according to arrangement and sequence. And this is where our ancients went, and this will help us crack the code, so to speak, when we look at all these ancient, like hieroglyphics and a lot of the symbols that these people are using, and you look at, what are they talking about? What are they trying to express here? Now people we're beginning to crack this code. Like even as Mark brought up, and this is known by a lot of people, the eye of Horus. The eye is a symbol of the thymus, is a symbol of, it has a meaning. It has a very precise scientific, because it's in our brain template, and understanding. And so these people had this understanding. And now we have to get it back. And to get out of Babel, the other thing is we need to all start speaking the same language. So if I talk about the eye of Horus, if I use it, the thymus in the brain, or if I use it in a psychological term, or the gate of God, the gate of Elohim, we all know what we're talking about. We're no longer like looking at each other like we're all talking about something different. We are all talking about the same basic archetypal principle or theology. So, but when you get into the supernal world, it's not about physicality anymore. It's about energy, and it's about wavelengths. It's about vibration. It's about short waves and long waves, and it's about static and movement. There's so many things going on. And science will give us words for that, but the text gives us these words for this. So they use a set of numbers. They use math. Is because, let me put it this way, the middle pillar, why it's considered to be harmonizing the left side and the right side. And again, let me say one more thing about male, female, left and right. That's what I'm talking about, all this. It's a binary system, but the right side of the brain, let's just say, the male side is the intuitive, can look at subject, likes to study. It's very holistic. It's intuitive. It's more concerned about the whole per se, and how the whole relates and interfaces, versus the left side of the brain, which is very logical, very sequential, very objective, and is looking at the part. So one is kind of going linear, and the other is going sort of a circle. Well, this is a whole concept. You get into the circle and the square. So, sometimes the sages, they crack because there's like nothing they haven't like thought through. And okay, so let me stay with this. So you have a left brain and a right brain, but you have the middle. You have this world of arrangement, of pattern, of number, because it's like, because Yahweh is combining different states of being, and he's got to kind of fit them and make room for them. I mean, seriously, how do you get a round circle in a square hole? Well, you can do it. There's a way to do it. So everything, it's so weird. I don't even know if I'm explaining this, because it's very theoretical, and but you know, you can put dissimilar, there's combinations of things together, but you have to have it right. You have to have openings and slits. That's what math is about. You know, geometry. How do you get circle? So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what I hope you can follow that, what I'm trying to say. So you have this whole world of number and arrangement, and this is why in our text we're constantly finding out the groupings, like why 3s are so important grouped together, why 5s are so important, why 7s are so important, why the sages will say in that with 10 is a perfect number, and he created the world with 10 Sephiroth, and he'll say 9, not 9 Sephiroth and not 11 Sephiroth. Well, why 10? Okay, so these things are all very important, but they're very linear, and they can go from one precept to another precept, and you can. Okay, so let me go back to, so in the 3s, when I say the right pillar, the middle pillar, and the left brain, our right brain, our left brain, our the middle part of our brain, this is a synthesizer. It's like the computer program that takes the information both sides, puts it together, and makes a coherent thought about it. It fits, but it also says they use speech and they use text. So there's 3 quote unquote books. There's 3 things that Yahweh is doing all at the same time to make it something holistic. It's using text, it's using letters, it's using an arrangement of that, it's using speech, which is, it gets akin to sound to the Bible. So in other words, in this, it gets in akin, the same thing they're saying, of light and sound, you know, coming together, combining, and making a synthesis. So you know, I get lost in all this. So I hope what I'm trying to say is the language is so precise and giving us absolute legs to stand on when it comes especially to the supernal worlds. And this is why in the language in the text they're constantly using the concept of air, water, earth, and fire. And they know exactly, and like I said, these are 4 states of matter that is visible or invisible. Now, and then this is akin to, let's say, the 5 levels of the soul and the 5 dimensions. So we are, like, when to uncode, like, I believe that Paul is amazing. Paul has totally his background of being a Pharisee coming into all the Essene understandings. He has a full package understanding, in my opinion. But when he would write a very benign statement like, or verse like 1 Thessalonians 5:23, and he would pray that your whole body, soul, and spirit be preserved blameless unto the coming of Adonai. Well, you know, it's a very nice, but when you unpack this with some of this understanding, it is so deep and beautiful, and it makes the rest of the Torah, everything that makes sense. So your body, as we know, is our sense consciousness. The body represents a level of the soul life. I've been through this a little bit. The nephesh soul life, which is attached to a ruach, which is our animating, our life force, our principle that makes our body just even move. You know, you gotta, it's the animation. But when they use words like clay, so Adam was made of the dust or clay, what they're really saying, his body parts, the physicality of him, is made out of the 4 basic, the elements. So our body is got water in it, it's got materiality in it, it's the 5 states. We have a whole system that breathes. We have fire is akin to plasma, but fire is our whole emotional apparatus. So there's a lot in the 5, the sense consciousness. There's a lot in body that's just, you know, so that's why if you just stick with the Peshat level meaning, you know, yeah, he's got a body, but you're missing a whole oh my gosh, all the gold that's in these understandings. So anyways, he wants to preserve our body. blameless, right? You got to be the master of your body parts and what it does. Your soul, your self-consciousness, this is the world of the astral planes. This is the world of the mind and of the heart. So he says, you know, to love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all of your heart. This is an element. This is where our intellect is housed. This is where our emotions are housed. This is where our will is housed. This is where our whole soul life is. It's a whole one of the 4 dimensions. It's called the world of Yetzirah, and it's the world of formation, when he made, formed, and created us. They're so specific about all this. So this has to be preserved. And a lot of times what Christians, what we're doing, or what people do, is we're trying to cleanse all the programs in us, all the memories, all the emotions, all of the trauma we've had, all of the wrong programming we've had. You know, cleaning your soul or making your soul holy is a full-time job. That's where, in my opinion, where the works are. Yeah, you got to do works. It takes a lot of work to clean out your soul. Oh my gosh! And then you throw into it all the generational DNA that we have. You know, the thing passed down by our ancestors, all the environmental stuff. I mean, it's a big job. Then you have what he calls your spirit, which is, for us, we have now spirit. We have a neshama soul. We have a connection. We have made the connection to our Father, to our Abba, and Abba, to our Heavenly Mother and our Heavenly Father. In other words, that's and that is in the category of breath when they talk about the breath of Elohim. It's a very high level program that actually will put you in touch with the divine, with the super, where you can know our Father on his terms, in his essence and likeness. So this is where these words are used. And so to get, you know, this concept of freedom from fundamentalism, everybody has a left brain and a right brain. Everybody has a middle pillar, and we're all involved in the same works of salvation. We all got to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, and we all need to integrate ourselves. That's individually. And then the greater thing that's going on all around us, and this gets into a lot of, again, the metaphysical language that is used for all Israel. And believe it or not, literally, this is the point, we are getting meshed together in a body. So an Elohim that is literally is interconnected, and as on many levels, our souls, our relationships on all these levels is being rewired together, which will become, you know, all Israel, which will become, like, again, is the new heaven and the new earth. It's a new, you know, he's rewiring the whole system that got really messed up in the fall and got some major computer, quote unquote, glitches or viruses in it. So that's that's a bigger part of the story. So we're kind of going up. We're going from little individual, you know, cells. We're being put together in a body. And there's a lot of theology of this. And this is, in our Torah, they use a lot of language because, again, one other thing, let me make 2 more points. How am I doing on time? In this language of the male and the female, the binary system with the middle pillar, and what's going on in 3 different levels, all at the same time, our body, soul, and spirit is constantly working in all of these different dimensions, all of the time, using speech, using alphabet text, and using number. These things you don't even, you know, I'm probably starting to go on a little rabbit trail. How number in our body is so, you know, we don't even think on that level, but we really, that's another whole world out there that you can. So, but coming back to this, so as we are ascending, so to speak, corporately as a body of people, let's just say even the 2 houses coming together, you know, getting an understanding of who we are, the bigger picture, what's going on, where we are on the prophetic timeline, then the next level is, and this is the promise in the word of Elohim, is that we will at some point, you know, there's a tipping point, you know, where we will be, quote unquote, in the sense, leveled up. The righteous will receive a final, like, hand coming down from the, you know, and lifting us up finally forever into a supernal realm where we have kind of left these lower states of being, and we really can function with great freedom, with great victory, just great freedom. We you know, you're not dogged anymore by the evil inclination. I mean, this is a place, this concept, this has a lot to do with, quote unquote, the study of the last days. This has a lot to do with eschatology. This has a lot to do with understanding how, what is it, what's up with this end of the 6th millennium into the 7th millennium. And again, I was, we can't make up what we think this means. We have to, again, go back to the Hebraic understanding in the house of Judah, and then you got to go back and you got to understand it's on 2 levels, because you got 2 houses. And 90% of the time, the Jews, I mean, I love Judah. I'm like, oh my gosh. But we know, and we're not, but they do not see Messiah ben Joseph as a big deal, basically. You know, their promises, their birthright, their whole persona, they're about Messiah ben David. And, you know, but as we raise our level of consciousness, raise our ability to dialogue at the complete and total big picture level, I think this is the next phase that we're coming into, where, you know, we can sit down with Judah and we can, and I think a lot of this thing happens in a prophetic sense, where it's not so much a leisurely thing where we're going to be forced to. I mean, there's one thing, when you have kids, there's a point in time where, you know, the dialogue just ends and you just say, hey, do it because I'm the daddy or the mommy, that, you know, this is what we're doing now. So there's so many levels of interaction, of, you know, the plan of Yahweh on so many different levels. He's working with us individually. He's working with us corporately. He is working with us within our family, our tribe, our nation, our place in the Olam Haba. We are actually working out our salvation in terms of our place in the world to come. And he is, the whole flip side, which I've never even talked about, and is he is working with us to defeat Satan at his own game, and using this, you know, and I haven't touched on the whole concept, which is deep in these of where evil comes from, what its place is, how it gets eliminated or defeated, and how it functions in side by side in the different dimensions in the different worlds, which is all in the text. It's all deeply coded. All this understanding is in the text. I guess what I was kind of really wanting to focus on was the physics of it, that what we can know about our world, there's nothing in that Judah hasn't had an understanding of. And part of my thing is Judah has, they have really been all about the law in terms of, because they've had to preserve themselves as an identifiable body of people on the planet, on a mission, and much of it in a state where they're not totally taken over by the other side. We all know there's varying degrees of all this, so that they can be a witness in the world. But a lot of this understanding, like I said, they have had, and and this is all part of how Yahweh, we know that it's imperfect to a certain extent, because there's huge pockets of the puzzle that it's still in blindness about or in denial about. But we have huge pockets that we're still in blindness about and in denial about. And as both parties begin to understand that, you know, yeah, Yeshua is Torah, he is the manifestation, but at the same time, they need to understand that, yeah, Yeshua is Torah, and Torah is Yeshua. There's a, like, we're both kind of climbing this pyramid back to the same point. But going back to some of the physics, so this is why in the ancients you'll have this concept of pi being so important. You will have this, the flower of life, the fruit of life, in the tree of life. They have an understanding of there's a whole world. If you've ever done any of these math things where you start with the seed, you go into the fruit, then the flower, they have a beautiful, ancients have had beautiful ways of explaining the progression of number, pattern and arrangement. Part of my thing is we need to stop being afraid of examining and understanding, because this is my thing. The New Agers, they use this stuff, they've gotten up to speed on it, but they just don't get any credit or don't connect it back up to the high element, to God. We need to get back into this stuff. We need to learn this language and understand what they're expressing and compare it to modern science. And again, it's always a matter of bringing things into the light, cleaning them up, getting rid of the darkness, making it shine again, so to speak. And I believe this is something that we can really excel at, especially as Ephraimites. But we have to get back into, again, more the things that we need, classical ways of learning, having respect for theology, having understandings of philosophy, understanding Hebrew. There's a lot of tools and things that we need to get up to speed. Learning these languages and these keys to the kingdom and these codes, and all at the same time, mentally, keeping ourselves pure and unspotted from the world, and working out our salvation, and bringing, again, back into the poeticness of Elohim, his love, his mercy, his justice into the world. So it's very busy, very busy. A lot going on. But basically, I said, freedom from fundamentalism is we're going to get our brains, the more we level up, the better off it is for everybody.